Hello, welcome back to Russ Sorter Garage and the 55 Chevy. No, I'm not building my 55 Chevy today. I'm working on my 55 Buick. So, welcome back to the 55 Buick POS special build. As we left off, hot side is done for the turbo. Now it's time to do some stuff up on top. So far, all I've done today, which is not video worthy, was I attached the oil pressure line. Hooray! Put a T-fitting in the back, and the top of the T, I'll feed the turbo. Somewhere I have an oil pressure feed line kit I'm sure I bought that is not in the trunk of the car, so I don't know where it is. I'll have to take a look around. And the other thing is I threw my knock sensors back in, or at least the harness. The sensors are already in there. I don't know if I'm going to tune them out or I'm going to use them. I have no idea. This turbo stuff's all new to me. So I'm going to connect them and see what happens. And if it looks like it pulls a lot of knock retard timing out for an unknown reason or a wrong reason, then I'll tune them out and we won't use them. But I'm going to put them in for now just to see what happens with them. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is intake manifold. All right, so I think I'm ready to put the intake on the car. Just kind of pick something to do and just, one little project at a time. Get in here. I'm going to clean the ports up with some brake clean. I gave the intake manifold a sort of cleaning. It was really dirty, and it's still pretty dirty, but I guess it's better than it was. I will say I have learned that next LS engine I do, first thing I'm going to do with it is degrease it and pressure wash it before I even turn a wrench on it. Because, man, these things are dirty. I don't know what the deal is with LSs, if they leak a lot of oil or something, but compared to the LT1s I was doing, they're quite a bit dirtier. At least this one was. It was a sludge machine. It looks a lot better now, but there's a lot of degreasing, a lot of carb cleaner, a lot of brake clean. All right, I think that's good enough for this side. For the head side, take out my port plugs. That's the other thing, these intakes, my God, there's a lot of oil in these LS intake manifolds. I think it's the PCV system, from what I've been told. Just makes lots of oil. Otherwise, I may have made a mistake not replacing the valve seals, because if this thing was burning oil like that, it had to have been the valve seals. So I guess I'll find out when it fires up if it's a smoker or not. Well, that was pretty simple. All right. Let's see if the bolts go in. All right, just spinning all the bolts in by hand first. Make sure I get them in. And I got to go look up the torque spec, because I don't know what it is. And these are not the injectors I'm going to be using. Obviously, I'm going to go bigger. I've got a couple sets of decapped. I think they flow around 75. I'll have to look at the sheets. But plan is to assemble this thing, crank it over with no spark or nothing, just to make sure I have oil pressure, and start it as is. So fire it up with no turbo, put a muffler on here, and with the stock injectors, and just make sure it runs and isn't banging and doesn't spit a rod like in the first 2 minutes. Yeah, so let me get the torque spec. We'll tighten this down. All right, well, I just went and found the torque spec for this, and I found that these bolts need sealer on them. When I looked up the torque spec, it said put Loctite on the bolts. Now, these really don't need Loctite, but usually if they say that, sometimes it's not just for locking the bolt in place, it's for sealing the threads. And sure enough, I just went and looked at the blown up 5.3 and checked the intake bolt holes, and they go all the way down into the head. So if you don't put sealer on the bolts, then oil can migrate up the threads. Now these bolts don't look like they had anything on them, and they also have a flat spot on the top that probably helps seal the oil as well. But regardless, I'm not going to use thread locker because I don't want these to be a pain to come apart, but I am going to use Permatex number 2, which is a non-hardening sealer, and it works great for threads. And that will keep any oil from coming up these things. Put a little dab on each bolt. Don't use RTV, that's not good. RTV has its place, this isn't it. Just gonna get them started so I know that they're threading in okay. Okay, so with the intake installed, I think before I get too crazy with the engine, I still want to verify if I need longer push rods or not, which means I need to get the oil pressure up on this engine, which means I need to crank it over. You know, did the priming with the weed sprayer, and that certainly primed the engine, but I don't know if it really filled everything as much as you got, you know, if you had an oil pump spinning. So I'm going to have to get power on this engine so I can crank it over. So no better time than now to get a battery installed. So originally on the Buick, battery was up front in the corner up there. You can see I already cut away part of the original battery tray for clearance for the accessories. And there would still be room to put a battery there, but not with the intercooler piping. I know I haven't talked about the intercooler yet, but I got ahead one day and just said, hey, I want to start mounting the intercooler. So I stuck it in place just to see where the piping was going to run, and obviously the battery's not going there anymore. And I still have some more trimming to do up there to clean that up. So I think the battery is going to have to go in the trunk. All right, so the trunk is full of parts. And it's loud in here because it's raining again. It seems like it's always raining lately. And I figure Let's put the battery back here in the corner. Let's see, something, you know, over there, but level, straight, something like that. Over there. I thought about putting it up under the package tray, but that'd probably be a pain in the ass to get to, so I think I'll just put it back there like that. So, I was going to put it in a box too, but I don't think there's any reason to put it inside a box back here. And yeah, I guess eventually I'll put like an Optima gel battery in there, because I think they don't make hydrogen when they're charging, but for now, this one's going in. Trunk seal's probably not the best. I don't think it's going to be that tight a seal in there, so I'll replace that weather stripping. So anyway, first thing I'm going to do is I think I just make an angle iron mount for the battery and go from there. And for free, I have a piece of an old bed frame. People were throwing out a bunch of metal, and I grabbed it because it was local, and can always use junk like this. So I'm going to cut this bed frame up and make a battery mount out of it. All right, the rain actually just lit up. It was pretty torrential there for a while. Anyway, just cut some sections of bed frame with the cutoff wheel, nothing special. Lay them out. That's going to be the base for the box. So we get that welded together and continue on. All right, and there it is, the $0 battery tray, made out of a bed frame, some leftover threaded rod, a few nuts and washers, all stuff that was laying around. So, battery in, like that. Then we got the threaded rod here. And we got the top plate that fits when you put it on straight, like that. Couple flat washers, couple lock washers, and nuts. That's it. Tighten it down. And that isn't going anywhere. Cool. All right. Next will be the battery cables. Pilot hole to start. Now, my final hole size is going to be determined by the grommet that I have. And of course, it's free. I don't know, I don't know where I got it. Probably from one of the cars, because every time there's a grommet, I snag them. So, got a unibit. We'll open this up, hopefully enough for this grommet. Maybe all the way through and it'll be big enough. Find out shortly. So there's the grommet, ground cable connected to the battery, and down to the frame. These grommets are not big enough for both cables to go through, so that's fine. So I got one through that one, and I'll pack the rest of that with some butyl to seal it up. And then I put another grommet up here in the front, and the positive cable will just run straight down through that and then down to along the frame. So that'll work out pretty good too. So let me get the ground cable bolted to the frame, and then we'll move to the positive side. All right, so we got the cable for the ground right here. There happened to be a hole right here, which was cool, except for I wanted to use a thread cutter bolt to put in there, and the hole was too big, so I tapped it for 3/8, and I really should have a star washer on this. I'm gonna have to go dig through a coffee can and find one, but for now it'll work. And obviously I ground the rust off of it so that the ground will get a connection. All right, for positive side, I don't know how much wire I'm going to need, so I'm just going to start feeding some through the hole, down to the floor, and then I'll raise the car up and get an idea how much we need here. So I ran the battery cable up to the front to the starter, and I was going to have it just come right up here to the battery, but I actually ran it long and looped it under the battery, because if I do ever, I guess, do anything silly and actually run this on a track and I need the on-off switch for NHRA legal, I guess, you need an on-off switch if the battery's in the trunk. I ran the cable long so I'd have enough to run to a switch. So I'm just going to route it under there, put an end on this, and put it there. And the way I make my battery cables, this is just some red heat shrink. May not even be big enough to get over my terminal that I'm going to use. So probably have to use red electrical tape. I don't think that's going to work. But all I'm going to do anyway is I buy these terminals, and I used to put them on and heat them up and put solder in them, but really a crimp is better. So put that on there, and I bought one of these hydraulic crimpers. It's a YQK70 hydraulic pliers. They come with a bunch of different dies, and for number 2 copper wire I use die number 25. And now you have a nice crimped end. It's not going anywhere. Works good. And just like every other tool, these come in handy for other jobs as well. And you will see this again in this build. All right, I apologize for that horrible video. Not much of a how-to when I'm in the way of the camera, but basically this die goes right around the base of the terminal there, and you just tighten this up and then just crunch this down until it crimps the fitting and back it off. So I know you couldn't see it, but it's pretty simple. You'll see that tool again. And then I'm just going to put some red electrical tape on this just so it's marked. Everybody knows that's the positive cable. And I'm just going to run that up to the battery, get a bolt in it, and yeah, I see we have alright, so with the battery connected, have our trunk light working. Dome light's working. Got a new lens for the dome light, so that works out cool. And then yeah, I have the map light wired to that as well. Now, what I want to do is crank this thing over and see what the oil pressure looks like. And then double check my push rods to see if there's still ash in them and I need to get longer push rods. All right, so there's no spark plugs in the engine. Just making sure all these wires that I have laying around here are not going to touch anything and short out when I crank this over. And it should just be crank it over. I mean, it should work. think it'll work. Let's see if it works. I don't know if it will or not. We've got power. We've got power. We've got radio. Oil pressure. That's not good. Oh, here we go. All right, so we're over 20, just cranking it. Call it 25, that's cool. All right, so I have instant oil pressure. Put that there. Well, it did. I did have instant oil pressure. So I have like close to 30 pounds of oil pressure just cranking it. But it's not all coming out of the top end yet. £30, close to 30 pounds of oil pressure. Yet, I don't think all the rockers have oil yet. But what I will say is there's no lash on this side. And this side I think was getting more oil than this side. Now this side, over here, because I can't get around the car. There's too much shit in here. There's still a little bit of lash. And all I can think is these are not completely full of oil yet, at least as far as the lifters go. I may just have to keep cranking it over. Because that has no lash, that has no lash, that has no lash, that has no lash, that one's open, that is a hair, that has a little bit, and that has a little bit. So maybe I just have to keep cranking it over until lifters are all full of oil. I don't think I'm hurting anything by cranking it. I've got oil pressure, and I used assembly lube on the bearings, but again, first LS, I don't know if this is par for the game or it's abnormal. I'm going to crank it over some more and see if it seems to make any difference. All right, well, I cranked it over some more, and it looks like it is making a difference because now this front one here doesn't have any lash in it. These still have some, but it may just be a matter of getting the lifters full of oil. And so I think I'm just going to end up putting it together and starting it and see what happens. And I guess we'll go from there. If it's noisy, it's noisy. It's just easier to do it all now if I had to change push rods, but we'll see how it goes. I think I'll just put it back together and continue on. So, we're moving along. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.